New Seagate, even from the precipice of the cog quarter, where Silas Thorne's establishment clung like a stubborn barnacle to the polished hull of the patrician ward, possessed a certain aroma, brine, ambition, and the faint, sweet decay of fortunes made and lost. But this afternoon, as the last bruised rays of the setting sun bled across the intricate clockwork facade of Silas's shop, there was a new, unwelcome note, the sharp tang of municipal unease. Silas Thorne, whose spectacles perched on a nose more accustomed to the gleam of gears than the glint of coin, paced behind a workbench cluttered with the disassembled viscera of a dozen automata. "The tear of Ethel," he rasped, gesturing with a tiny silver-tipped screwdriver towards a schematic of the Temple of the Azure Covenant. "Gone, and the High Priestess, Lyra, sits there, a living statue, speaking only in the language of the deep, slow blink." Dalton Fellwinter, a human mercenary whose posture suggested a lifetime spent weighing steel and intentions, leaned against a wall, arms crossed, his gaze a study in practiced skepticism. "So the gods have packed their bags, eh? What's that to a goldsmith, Silas?" He wasn't a man given to faith, more to the reliable crunch of boots on cobblestone. Mara Goldpocket, a hobbit rogue whose eyes missed nothing, had already catalogued every escape route and potential hiding spot in the cramped workshop. She idly polished a small ornate pick, her expression a careful balance of amusement and shrewd assessment. "Chaos, Dalton," Silas interjected, tapping a loose gear back into place. "The unpredictable currents, the shifting tariffs, the entire system grinds to dust." Wilfred Loamfoot, another hobbit, whose nimble fingers were already tracing the lines of a broken automaton spring, hummed softly. His quiet concentration was a balm against Silas's frantic energy. "A precise mechanism, a delicate balance," he murmured, understanding the implications for his own craft. Fay Meadowbrook, the young maid, stood a little apart, her brow furrowed, a faint ethereal glow flickering around her hands as she subtly sensed the residual arcane energies of the missing relic. Willow Larkspur, her eyes sharp, studied the schematic, identifying the temple's lesser-known service tunnels. Anya Meadowsweet, Sarah Meadowlake, Gemma Fairweather, and Lila Thistlelick, a quiet contingent clustered near the entrance, their faces a mixture of apprehension and unwavering support. They listened to Silas outline his offer, a hefty retainer of untainted Karzalan silver, to either make Lyra speak, or, failing that, to uncover the precise method by which the tear had departed, bypassing the temple's complex alarms. "Find the broken pattern," Silas urged, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "before New Seagate devours itself." Dawn in New Seagate was a thing of grinding gears and the distant, mournful cries of gulls. The party, roused from a short, uneasy night in a rented room above a particularly odorous chandlery in the cog quarter, felt the chill of the morning air, a premonition of the colder reception awaiting them. The first rays of the rising sun, butter-yellow and hesitant, struggled to pierce the perpetual haze of industry, painting the smog-stained chimneys with a fleeting, hopeful gold. They ate a hurried breakfast of stale bread and strong, bitter coffee, bought from a street vendor whose voice was hoarse from endless hawking, before beginning their ascent. The journey from Silas's workshop through the increasingly manicured streets was a slow, deliberate shedding of the city's rougher skin. The air grew cleaner with every upward step, the cacophony of the workshops fading into a gentler murmur of commerce and hushed conversations. Dalton led, his keen eyes scanning rooftops and alleyways, instincts honed from countless campaigns, ever vigilant. Mara moved like a shadow beside him, her small frame weaving through the sparse early morning crowds with an almost preternatural grace, noting every detail, every facial twitch. Wilfred, a small satchel of tools clinking softly at his hip, walked with a craftsman's measured pace, occasionally pausing to admire a particularly intricate lock or a well-turned balustrade. Fay, head bowed slightly, seemed to be conversing with unseen currents, her internal world a quiet storm of arcane possibilities. Willow, with her keen eye for practical mechanics, observed the shifting street architecture, noting the subtle differences in building materials and engineering that marked the city's economic strata. Anya, Sarah, Gemma, and Lila, usually so vibrant amidst the familiar bustle of Sunnysnook, felt the weight of New Seagate's growing quietness. The journey was a passage from the predictable grit of human enterprise to the unsettling silence of divine absence. By midday, the sun hung high, a blazing coin in the azure sky, as they reached the patrician ward. Here, the paving stones gleamed, wet from recent cleaning, and the air carried the faint scent of imported spices and expensive perfume. The Temple of the Azure Covenant, its lapis lazuli domes shimmering like captured pieces of the Karzalan Sea, loomed before them, an edifice of immutable power, now radiating an unnerving stillness. Inside, the cool, echoing silence was profound, broken only by their careful footsteps. Lyra, High Priestess, sat motionless, a figure sculpted from dread. Dalton tried a gruff, direct question. Mara offered a soft, coaxing tone. Faye attempted a delicate magical probe, and Wilfred subtly observed the empty reliquary for any minute alteration. But only Lyra's slow, unseeing blinks offered response. It was Lila, her young voice surprisingly clear in the vast nave, who asked, "What are you seeing, priestess?" Lyra's lips parted, a dry, raspy whisper escaping. "It was not taken. It departed. The gods are leaving the city." Her words hung in the air, a chilling pronouncement that transcended any simple theft, transforming their mission into something far more profound and terrifying. Lyra's pronouncement, echoing like a death knell in the cavernous temple, left a profound chill in the air, a colder dread than any seaside fog. The sun, now a distant memory beyond the temple's thick walls, yielded to a bruised twilight that seeped into the patrician ward, painting the pristine streets in shades of lavender and deepening shadows. The group spent that first evening in hushed discussion, finding refuge in a quiet inn far from the temple's unnerving silence. Dalton, pragmatic as ever, quickly dismissed the notion of departing gods as an excuse for an inside job. "Gods don't just depart without a forwarding address," he grumbled, cleaning his short sword with a meticulous cloth. Someone helped it along. Mara, however, recognized the potential for a deeper truth. A grand exit, a statement. If it wasn't taken, then it allowed itself to be moved, or someone facilitated its self-motion. That points to Rorik, the acolyte. His optimization of wards sounds suspiciously like a bypass. The following days became a slow, deliberate descent, both physically and morally. The journey from the patrician heights to the brine pits was not a quick sprint, but a week-long immersion into the underbelly of New Seagate. Each sunrise brought a new layer of grime and cacophony. The first day, they navigated the bustling merchant wards, the air thick with spices and shouting vendors. They paused for a hearty, if greasy, lunch at a dockside tavern, Dalton watching every entry and exit, Mara subtly extracting rumors from a gossipy bartender, while Wilfred examined the tavern's surprisingly robust clockwork mechanisms. Anya and Sarah, using their unassuming charm, gathered tales of Rorik's eccentricities and his recent disappearance into the lower city. Dusk painted the sky in fiery oranges and deep purples as they finally settled into a cramped, noisy inn in a transitional district, the sounds of distant ship horns and raucous laughter filling the night. They kept their travel light, relying on the city's myriad food stalls, enjoying hearty stews and freshly baked bread when they could, but often subsisting on dry biscuits and salted meat. The second and third days saw them delve deeper into the grimy industrial areas, where the air grew heavy with coal smoke and the metallic tang of shipyards. The sun became a grudging, smudged glow in the perpetual haze, and the streets, once paved, gave way to cobbled paths slick with unidentifiable fluids. Faye spent hours in a dusty second-hand bookshop, poring over ancient city plans, her mind racing with arcane possibilities, while Willow, using her master mechanician skills, meticulously examined the city's public utility access points, searching for any sign of Rorik's peculiar handiwork. Gemma and Lila, initially overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the city's poverty and desperation, found themselves observing with a quiet resolve, their small kindnesses earning them fleeting smiles and unexpected snippets of information. By the fourth day, the stench of low tide and stale liquor clung to everything. They had reached the brine pits, a labyrinth of rusting jetties and ramshackle shanties, where the Duchy's authority frayed to nothing. Here, the optimization Rorik performed could be found in the crudely bypassed locks, the jerry-rigged ventilation systems, and the faint, almost imperceptible hum of arcane circuitry intertwined with salvaged clockwork. It was a place where hope was a luxury and secrets were currency, a perfect hiding spot for a disgraced acolyte with a talent for breaking rules. The fifth day dawned over the brine pits with a grudging gray light, filtering through a perpetual haze of sea mist and industrial effluvium. The air tasted of rust and stale promises, a fitting backdrop for what they were about to uncover. Mara, after days of silent observation and cunning negotiation in the dingiest of taverns, had finally pinpointed Rorik's most likely lair, a derelict warehouse near the southernmost docks, its heavy, salt-pitted doors secured with a tangle of wires and crude yet complex clockwork. Dalton, his hand never far from his sword hilt, studied the entrance. "Looks like Rorik designed his own welcoming party," he grunted, noting the telltale shimmer of arcane wards barely concealed by the grimy metalwork. Wilfred, however, saw past the superficial. His keen eye, honed by years of intricate craftsmanship, identified the elegant bypass within the chaos. "He's not protecting it from outsiders," the hobbit murmured, pointing to a subtle, almost invisible mechanism. "He's ensuring nothing gets out, or rather that its passage is controlled." The approach was a symphony of their combined skills. Mara, with the quiet grace of a forest cat, picked a complex mechanical lock Wilfred had helped decipher, her fingers dancing over tumblers that seemed to sigh open. Faye, with a whispered word and a delicate, almost invisible surge of arcane energy, ghosted past the magical wards, neutralizing them just enough to allow passage without triggering an alarm that would wake the entire brine pits. Dalton stood sentinel, his broad frame a shield against any prying eyes or curious shadows. Willow, her master mechanician skills proving invaluable, disarmed a tripwire connected to a primitive but effective noise trap. Anya, Sarah, Gemma, and Leela provided quiet support, their presence a grounding force amidst the building tension. Inside, the warehouse was a cavernous space, filled with the ghostly silhouettes of forgotten crates and the acrid smell of ozone and old metal. Rorik was there, hunched over a workbench, not fleeing, but meticulously working. He was a gaunt, furious figure, his hands stained with oil and arcane residues. He didn't have the Tear of Aethel. Instead, he was working on an array of modified arcane conduits, each humming with a faint, unsettling energy. "You fools," Rorik spat, his voice raspy from disuse. "You think I stole it? The Tear chose to leave. Lyra felt it. I merely built the pathway for its departure, a controlled exit, a final, undeniable statement." He explained with a mad glint in his eye how he'd seen the Tear's internal luminescence wane, felt its presence diminish in the temple, long before its physical departure. The city's greed, its ruthless commerce, the erosion of genuine faith, it had driven the relic and whatever divine essence it embodied away. He had constructed an elaborate, almost elegant mechanical arcane bypass that mimicked the temple's natural energy flow, allowing the Tear to flow out, leaving no trace of physical theft, only a spiritual void. Dalton, ever pragmatic, saw the truth in Rorik's frantic honesty. Faye, her eyes wide with a mage's understanding, confirmed the unique energy signature emanating from Rorik's conduits, a resonance with the lingering energy of the Tear. Wilfred, examining the bypass, nodded slowly, impressed by the sheer, audacious engineering. A clever trick, he conceded, to make a departure look like nothing at all. The confrontation wasn't a fight of steel, but of revelation, the truth of a departing deity more unsettling than any common theft. Rorik's optimizations were a funeral procession for the city's faith, a mechanical lament for a god who had simply given up. The dawn, now fully broken, cast long, accusatory shadows through the grimy warehouse windows, revealing not a stolen jewel, but a deliberate, spiritual abandonment.
The journey back from the brine pits was marked by a quiet somberness, the revelations of Rorik's warehouse heavy on their collective souls. The morning sun, which had offered little cheer in the grimy depths, now shone with an almost mocking brilliance upon the pristine streets of the patrician ward. The usual bustle of New Seagate seemed a hollow pretense, a thin veneer over the profound spiritual wound they now understood. The salty tang in the air, once invigorating, now felt like the taste of tears. They delivered their findings to Silas Thorne later that afternoon. the goldsmith listening with a grim, almost fatalistic expression as Dalton recounted Rorik's tale of divine departure and engineering and exit, not a theft. Mara added details of Rorik's meticulously crafted bypass, while Faye explained the arcane resonances that confirmed his account. Wilfred presented a small, intricately drawn diagram of Rorik's contraption, a testament to his unique skill and the acolyte's mad genius. Silas, after a long silence, removed his spectacles, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "The gods are leaving," he murmured, the words sounding less like a madman's prophecy and more like a ledger entry that refused to balance. Not stolen, but abandoned. The tariffs will shift, the ledgers will not balance. The entire system grinds to dust. His fear was not of divine wrath, but of economic collapse, a pragmatist's interpretation of spiritual desolation. He paid them their promised silver, his hand trembling slightly, the coin feeling colder than usual. For Dalton, the mission had shifted from a simple recovery to a stark realization of the city's inherent rot. He felt a grim satisfaction in uncovering the truth, but no comfort. Mara, ever the opportunist, began to calculate the value of information in a city suddenly stripped of its divine anchor, envisioning new markets for different kinds of protection. Wilfred, however, found himself deeply troubled. The idea of a beautiful, powerful relic choosing to depart, rather than being forcefully removed, spoke of a profound sadness, a spiritual failure that resonated with his meticulous craftsman's soul. He pondered Rorik's desperate attempt to provide a dignified exit, a final act of respect for a departing power. Faye, with her nascent magical understanding, felt the echo of the tier's departure, a faint, lingering coldness in the city's magical currents. She realized that power, even divine, could be fickle, and that knowledge sometimes was a heavier burden than ignorance. Willow, Anya, Sarah, Gemma, and Lila, though not directly involved in the revelation, felt the tremor of its implications. The simple life they yearned for, the stable community they cherished, seemed fragile against the backdrop of a major city forsaking its deities. Their journey through the gilded cages and festering underbelly of New Seagate had shown them a truth far more complex than a simple theft, and far more perilous to the future of the sprawling port city. The last rays of the setting sun, painting the temple's domes in a defiant blood-red hue, seemed to whisper of a reckoning, a heavy price for a departing god, and a city left to face its own unraveling without divine grace.